Urban Philosophical Dilemmas, Presentation 3, on Chapters 4 and 5 by Shayla Superior. Chapter 4 is about Lewis Gordon's discussion on theorized dynamics of anti-Black racism in America. Here, Gordon discusses what it is like to be Black in an anti-Black society. He does so by referencing existentialism. He proposes a way of breaking down the human condition to the consciousness and body. Our body is our protective perspective in the world. However, the conscious and the body cannot be divorced. The body's perspective has three dimensions: seeing, being seen, and being conscious of being seen. This is related to the idea that authentically, as a human, you're both a subject and an object. A subject recognizes agency and consciousness, and an object is the physical body able to be seen by someone. We accept that we are objects. Blacks aren't recognized as being human in full because they are not seen as a subject, only an object. They are objects that are both too much and too little at the same time. This makes them both invisible and overly visible. All of these concepts are socially constructed. As W.E. Du Bois said, to be Black is to be seen as a problem, and that is because we made it that way. Blackness is seen as a contaminating space. Blackness is overdetermined because it becomes who you are. If you are Black, it swallows you and doesn't allow for individualism. Your existence is determined from the outside and reduces you to stereotypes. These stereotypes leave the impression that even one Black is one too many. In Chapter 5, Daniel Haggerty discusses the concept of white guilt and shame. He does this by applying moral psychology and philosophy to the issue. He discusses how white guilt in America is ineffective because of the embedded racism. White guilt is part of a bigger ideology, which is the idea of whiteness in America. White guilt is also socially constructed. Whites react out of fear through feelings of guilt, and then do not claim responsibility of the guilt by distancing themselves. Haggerty proposes that we construct white shame instead. This emphasizes community and expectations rather than actions. He also discusses Lewis and his distinctions between shame and guilt. In class, the distinction between shame and guilt was discussed a lot. Shame has a connection with the community. There is a cultural construct of shame when you go too far. Shame breaks us down in a way where we lose ourselves and become a community. It brings up the idea of I and we and how it can be both good and bad. Shame is mostly focused on judging yourself and having the fear that someone else has witnessed or is watching what you're doing. Unlike guilt, there isn't the same third-party aspect. It is meant to be restorative. The victim confronts the perpetrator in an attempt to bring them back together again. Shame is also more personal. It is a harder feeling to rid compared to guilt because it goes against our American values, which is what we socially constructed. Guilt is another concept discussed related to shame. They may appear to be similar, but actually differ. Guilt is about punishment, whether it be internal self-punishing anger or it be pushed outward due to the sense of judging by others, like a third party discussed earlier. There is a goal of justice with guilt. It is procedural and transgressional with the intent of punishment, even though you're afraid of what it may be. It focuses on the past injustices. With guilt, you feel bad about your behavior, while with shame, you feel bad about yourself. All in all, these chapters discuss how Blacks are only an object or a body defined by whites. But Chapter 5 discussed why we define them that way. It is based on how we interpret what had happened. Either way, whites interpret it in a way which they feel guilt or shame, based on how they perceive the past. This issue will always be around. It is just handled differently by whites based on how they were raised. Both chapters discuss how these situations were socially constructed, except it was the whites who created these environments for both whites and Blacks.